everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth and Story, and I want to talk a little bit before I even get into the deck, because for me this deck isn't about so much the deck as it's about what the deck represents. And as you can see, it's quite obvious that I do have the Guardian Angel Tarot cards. I personally want to get this put into a bag. This is not one I want to keep into this particular box. I need to get a special bag for this. I don't have any connection of this deck to Doreen Virtue or Radley Valentine or any of the things that go around the deck about it, you know, being a gentler form of tarot because tarot is so big, bag, and ugly, and all of that sort of political conversations surrounding this deck. None of that matters to me, to be completely honest. I didn't purchase this deck because I was particularly drawn to be working with it, or because I thought it was an amazing concept, or anything of that nature. I bought it purely and simply because every time I would see someone talk about it, it reminded me of my grandmother. It reminded me of old prayer cards. It reminded me of old rosaries. It reminded me of the statue of Mother Mary outside of the church that I went to with my grandmother as a small child. And it reminded me of everything that for me is good and gentle and loving about the Christian church. And I have very little associations with Christianity and lovingness. And so those are memories that I find as I get older. I cherish them more and more, simply because I do have such a break off. And just in a quick encapsulation here, so we're not going to go depth into depth. I've talked about this before. I was raised as a very relaxed Catholic. My parents were both raised Catholics. We did not on our own attend church at where we lived. We lived about an hour and a half from where my grandparents lived, and we spent most every weekend there. And so when I would go to church, it was with my grandparents to a little Norman Rockwell, a little fishing town at the side of a lake with a little church, a little Catholic church, St. Mary's, with a little steeple and a white statue of Mother Mary outside where you could sit and have conversation with her and pour out your small soul to her loving ears, where the nuns were across the street, living in the house across the street from the church, and we would make buckeye necklaces and take them to the nuns to sell to them, and they would buy them with cookies and milk at their kitchen table. And the church was literally 3 doors down from my grandmother's house and right next to the park in which we spent much of our time playing. And so inside of the church was a dark, I remember, just very dark wood, and small, had a little balcony. We usually sat up in the balcony, and I loved everything about it. I loved going in. I loved kneeling before going into the pews. I loved the standing up and sitting down and the kneeling. I never went through catechism or anything to know what all of the various things might address. It was purely a visceral experience for me, because it was not an intense religion for me. It was a comfortable religion, a religion that I wasn't even catechized in. I was baptized into the Catholic Church as a baby, but I never went through I went through a little bit of catechism with my aunt, but it was, again, very unstructured. I didn't go through what many people's experiences are with the Catholic Church. So for me, it was all very visceral. It was all about dark, worn wood. It was all about the ritual, the beauty and the ritual of the sitting and the standing and the kneeling and all this. It was about the beauty of the stained glass. It was about the little room that you could access from outside nearby the statue of Mary, that was filled with these red types of candle holders and other types of candles in which you could light with them to long matches to light and send. Literally, I could send a prayer or a wish. You know, I was a kid. I didn't know the difference, if there is any difference, up to heaven. And so all of that visceral experience of a beautiful experience is what I have in childhood of the Catholic faith. When I was in 5th grade, my parents were saved into the fundamental Baptist religion, which takes Protestantism and, puts it to the extreme end of things, where it was no pants, no movies, no television, no secular books technically, although I lived at the library. That was my saving point. There was no holidays. We stopped celebrating Christmas and Easter, and everything except for Thanksgiving was the only approved holiday. It was going from what I just explained to hellfire and damnation. The very first message I ever remember hearing in a Baptist church was a literal hellfire and damnation message, where there were people burning in hell, and there were maggots that were eating people, and they were demons gnawing at their bones, and if you don't want to go there, then you need to come up and get saved. Well, yes, sign me up. I would have at that point, I just remember intense fear. And that idea of, if they would have told me to stand on my head, spin around 3 times, then jump up and down 100 times, I would have done what I should have been done in order to not have to go to this horrifying place that somehow I had gotten to the age of whatever age you are in 5th grade, not real knowing ever existed. And so in a very much in terms of memory and even in experience, if I really think about them methodically, like how it actually happened, but especially in memory, there was a complete and utter shift between this beauty and reverence and visceral, nurturing aspect that was very female driven. I don't even know that I remember thinking about God or Jesus Christ ever at all as this comfortable young Catholic girl. I really just thought of Mary. And so I went from that to almost like a light bulb switch to utter and complete fear and nightmares for the rest of my existence, well into adult life, being terrified all the time. So there's a huge gap between those experiences. And I have found as an adult, the older that I've gotten, I at one point, I'm just going to go into I have videos on the way my path went in terms of spirituality. But when I kind of threw everything out, the idea of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because once I decided, as a young adult, decided this is simply not working for me, I simply threw it all out. Anything that even was remotely related to religion, a Christian-based religion, was not going to be in the cards. And but when I I studied Buddhism for a very long time, and Taoism, and Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Buddhist that I greatly respect, had written about how our spiritual roots are actually important. Whether we go on to become Buddhists or whatever it is that we further on in our lives go on to become, our roots are actually important, and they are long lasting. And it is true, no matter how far away I get from both my Protestant and my Catholic upbringing, and the very differences between the two, they still have an impact on me today at the ripe age of 47 years old, and I have not been a practicing Christian since my early 20s. But it still has an impact on who I am. Those roots are very, very deep. And so coming to terms with those are important. So I did spend some time years ago readdressing the Protestant faith, untangling what was the specific brand of the Protestantism that I was raised in, kind of untangling that from the Protestants just in general, and coming to terms with that. And I went through that, even to see, is there anything of that I may want to take with me as I move forward, and coming to the conclusion that I was comfortable with. I was able to kind of set to rest a lot of things, but that it really wasn't anything that interested me as becoming something that I practiced. And later on, I realized that for me, what Thich Nhat Hanh was talking about, my roots, was more to do with the Catholic beginning phases, where my parents were in the Catholic Church and their parents were probably in the Catholic Church, and so on and so forth, that was my real roots. Now, that doesn't mean that I want to become a Catholic either. I simply am not, that path, that Christian path, is not the path for me. But it is part of me. It's part of my roots. I would say, I was talking to Annika from Nobody Here and today about this. When I sent her this image of a picture of the rosary that I picked up, which we're going to get to. And, I have roots of Christianity. I have strong roots of Buddhism as a philosophy. I didn't study it as a religion, but it very much impacted me and brought a great deal of peace to me, as well as a hearty dose of Celtic shamanism, I would say, in the line of the Way of Weird book. Those are kind of the three things that do have an impact on my spiritual path. I do think of myself in the lines of mysticism more than anything else, and the mystical elements that you can pull from many different religions. And that's where we see some amazing beauty in even the Catholic Church. When you go back prior to Protestantism, when we see some of the mystics, and for me especially with Julian of Norwich, who was an anchoress in the Roman Catholic Church, who was walled into a church and wrote Revelations of Divine Love. When I read Revelations of Divine Love in college, it was the first time that I had that sort of reminder, that touching base of what the experience of Mary as a child was for me. And it's the face of the goddess. I mean, it is truly the face of the goddess. And the mystics, the female mystics in the Catholic Church, when she wrote Revelations of Divine Love, there's some things that technically could have gotten her in a lot of trouble, although she was already walled up into a church, because she saw Mary separately, the Mother Mary, and wrote about her, but she saw the divine feminine in Jesus and in God, and that's not something that you talk about. The Protestant religion that I was raised in was almost completely devoid of any kind of feminine aspect, because Mary, Protestantism so much is a reaction against the Catholic Church and against the veneration of Mary, that they went so far to not venerate Mary that it was almost as if she didn't exist other than to be an incubator to have given birth to Jesus. So there's respect there as a human being, but that's about it. In terms of the religion itself, it was pretty much devoid of any divine feminine aspect. My experience with the divine feminine was very much encapsulated in that early experience with Mary as a child, and later on as an adult in the aspect of Kuan Yin. But prior to that, I had that's my experience of the divine feminine, and interests me, and it awes me that in certain periods of the Catholic Church, in which we're talking about a massive patriarchy that was very harsh and very cruel and very difficult for women, they were still able to bring out the face of the goddess within that structure. And so that's what I see a lot of the ideologies around Mary, is sort of that subversive face of the goddess coming out in a very patriarchal religion. And so that fascinates me. That's probably a video for another time. However, so I've just been thinking about it a lot. When I purchased this deck, I've had this deck for a few months, 2 months maybe, because my grandmother is getting ready to turn 100 years old. And so we were coming up on her birthday, and then we were talking about, oh, she's going to be 100. And so I thought, you know what, I've just got to buy this deck, because every time I see this deck, I think of my grandmother. Now, my grandmother was a full Catholic. She went to church every single day as an older person. She gave communion to shut-ins and to the nursing home, which she now lives in. She was a Catholic to the full sense of the word. She had rosaries, she had statues of Mary. She was fully invested in her church, and her church was fully invested in her. But I never saw anything but love and graciousness from her. In fact, I remember when I told her that I was a Buddhist, or practicing Buddhism, she just kind of smiled and patted my knee and said she understood kind of walking a different path, because she became a Catholic as a young adult in order to marry her husband, and yet it ended up completely loving her experience in the church. And so she just, we all have our own path, just graciousness, complete and utter graciousness. And even as an adult, when she came up here to visit, because I wasn't a practicing Christian, I would take her to church, to the Catholic Church, because Baptists aren't going to go into a Catholic church, so I would take her to Mass. And we had that wonderful experience together. Even then as an adult, coming full circle to that experience of going to church with her as a child. That was very gracious memories for me. And I made a rosary for her. Michael made her angel statuaries. And with most of her, she had 9 children, and all of them had converted to a strict religion that saw the Catholic Church as, the whore of Babylon. And so it was very difficult for her, because she was this sort of lone island left in a religion that was fairly denigrated by all the people around her. But she's always held to that. She's always held true to that. And I will say it, forever after, if there were only more religious people of any religion that had as much grace and love and sweetness and kindness, the world would be a better place. And so today's been a hard day for me, in that she's had a few strokes. She's again getting ready to be 100. We're not expecting her to live forever, but it stirred up a lot, even though my pragmatic side says she's lived a full and absolutely loving and full life. The child in me that went to church with her, and that all these memories that I have with her, wants her to live forever. And it was quite more distressing to me. Not that she's currently dying that we know of yet, although there's some question there. But she's had multiple strokes, and she's no longer, she's been healthy really all the way up. She's had an amazingly healthy life. And so to see her confused and not recognizing people, and sort of losing her, regardless of how long the process takes, has been extremely disconcerting for me, and obviously stirred up a lot of things also with having lost Michael. And so it just all conglomerated into being a very difficult day for me. A couple days, but certainly today was very difficult. And I found myself at a little Catholic shop right down the road, because I had looked into some rosaries, because her birthday was coming up, and I thought that I would get her a rosary for her birthday, although we're not really supposed to get her anything. She has limited space, but a rosary's small. So I had looked at rosaries, and lo and behold, online, I had seen this rosary, and I can't remember if it was this one exactly, but I think that it was. And so you can see this beautiful, almost Maid Marian kind of looking, in a twisted branch with dogwood flowers. And the crucifix is actually a dogwood tree. And I just thought it was absolutely stunning. I'd never seen anything like it. And on a personal level, I found it very compelling. Because coming to terms with and this to me brings together, because the story of Odin and the story of Jesus, the beautiful mythology that is there, of sacrifice, however we want to view, however you, depending on your path, views Jesus. He was a man. He was somebody who did live. She was a mother who, for all intents and purposes within the story, knew that she was going to lose her son. Her son wasn't going to live to be an old age. I greatly resonate with the experience of Mary as a mother, knowing that your child wasn't going to live to be older. And she did deal with the loss of her son and the death of her son. And that experience of Jesus sacrificing himself as Odin did for the greater good. This is a beautiful archetype, however you want to view that, whether you view him as God and the Son of God, whether you view it as an archetype, however it is, it's part of the greater landscape of beautiful thing to teach us. And I thought this representation with the tree was extremely resonating for me, because I'm very much obviously into trees and these types of thing, and it really again ties it with that understanding of Odin hanging on sacrifice on the tree. And I just thought it was amazing. And so I stopped in at this little store, and I asked when I got in there. The first thing I saw was this, and I had to pick this up because this pure white kind of plaster Mary is what I grew up with. I mean, I know that there were other images within the church themselves that had, were painted and all that kind of thing. But the statuary that was outside that I spent so much time talking to was this kind of white plaster. Now, I believe, I don't know if I have any images of it. I'm going to have to try to find it or look more closely when I go back. But I believe her arms were open, not in prayer, but she looked very much like this. And so when I saw this very much resonated with me, of the Mary that I that kind of divine feminine that I have such great resonance with. And so I knew I had to get that. And then I asked them, I said, I was here because I was looking for this particular, do you have any crosses or any crucifixes with that are actually on a tree? And they're like, well, they're all on a tree. Like you mean the wood's going to look more like tree wood? I'm like, no, I mean literally on a tree. And so we looked a little. We looked through the crucifixes. Neither one of us saw it. And she went and talked to the owner, and he said, no, he's never even heard of any kind of crucifix like that. He was quite entranced by the idea of it, but he said, no, he's never even heard of a crucifix that looked like a tree. And I said, I thought I saw it on the website for this particular shop, but nobody had ever even heard of that kind of, they were all, they deal in crucifixes, and they were all really interested in the idea of it, but they said, no, it wasn't, they didn't have it. And so I started, I looked through all the other crucifixes because I really just felt like I wanted, I have mala beads that I use, and I just wanted that kind of touchstone with my grandmother. I wanted, it was just that kind of, I needed, she greatly loved and was, used and was connected to her rosaries, and I just felt like I really wanted that connection. And so I was looking through all of them, went through all the racks, and they had like 4 racks, like three times, I would say. And, there were some pretty ones, and there were this, and there was that, but just none of them, I was like, they just weren't doing it for me. And, So I really ended up getting ready to go, and as I was leaving, I looked at the one that was close. You know, you had to walk. I was kind of worked my way this way, and then I had to walk back through, and I just happened to look one more time at a case that I'd looked at multiple times, and so had she. And I saw this, and well, I actually saw this part, and I said, I think that's it. And then I looked a little closer, and I saw this, and I said, that's it. And so I went and got her, and like, it's, you know, here it is. And she was just amazed. She got it out. She took it back to the owner, who was completely amazed, had never seen it before, absolutely loved it, but had not seen, they didn't even know that they had it, you know, that kind of thing. So it was just that kind of, again, synchronicity that says, you know, this is something is to be mine. And so I picked this up as well, obviously, and then I did pick up a saint icon for Bridget, because she's Goddess Bridget, and you know, obviously with the Catholic movement into Ireland, changed to a saint, and so I picked that up because they were like 65 cents, so why not? So I picked that up, and so this brings us full circle to here we are with my rosary, my beautiful, beautiful rosary, and my beautiful image of Mary here, which has actually a place to put holy water. I probably will put some moon water there, and I don't find that to be disrespectful. I apologize if anybody is, you know, would find that to be disrespectful. For me, this is, you know, this is an aspect of the goddess that has a great resonance with me. So this is how we come full circle, and there is comfort to be found in our past, and again, and kind of reconciling our roots. There can be a comfort there, especially if it's attached to such amazing memories, as it is for me. So now we are, you know, half an hour in, and we haven't even looked at the deck. I'm going to set this over here. Actually, the way her hands are, she very perfectly is able to hold on to, which is how I have them on my shelf, is able to hold on to the rosaries, which you can't see from here, but so all of that is to say that I don't approach this deck as a discussion on tarot and the softening of the original tarot. All of you out there who are watching this most likely have watched enough of my videos to know that I love the tarot in all of its glory of light and shadow. I don't like decks that soften things down too much, except for specific purposes, such as the Wild Wisdom Tarot, which I think doesn't soften as much as it seems to, number one, and number two, has a purpose for me with working with children. This deck for me stands outside of the discussions of Doreen Virtue. I don't really care about that discussion. I don't agree with some of the things, the language and the marketing used on this deck, as if it's the big bag scary tarot over here and this is the answer to that. All of that, none of that stuff for me is relevant in this deck. This deck is for me purely sentimental, and it is purely a reflection of a gentler and naive and wonderful expression of sort of seeing, again, maybe seeing tarot through the eyes of a child who is still has the benefit of being naive and of simply seeing the beauty in all the different aspects. And so I'm not really even going to go through the guidebook. It's a typical box. It's a typical guidebook. It's, you know, it's a Doreen Virtue deck with Radley Valentine, and that's all I really have to say about that, because for me, this isn't about that. For me, this is just about the experience of nostalgia and the experience of just letting it be what it is, just enjoying it for what it is. And so that's what I'm doing with it. So it is gilded, which is, you know, appropriate. And you can see it's that very vintage, kind of shabby chic, I guess they call it. It's taking artwork, obviously, from vintage, old vintage, well, who knows, storybooks, prayer cards, magazines, books, you know, that kind of thing. It's a collage of different styles, and it's that typical Doreen Virtue where we have the great band of text on the bottom. Now I have two decks of Doreen Virtue which follow the same style in terms of text and the image. One of them I've come to terms with, which is the Angel Tarot. I used it for quite a few readings in the challenge that was thrown down to me. And while I don't use it professionally, I will always keep it, and I have fond relationship with it, despite, you know, some of its issues. The other is the Fairy Tarot, that I chopped all of the wordage off of it and kept about 54 of them of the 78 and turned it into a gorgeous fairy tale oracle. And that's all that needs to be said about that. This one, no real good way to do that to this, because, you know, no matter what you do to them, I guess then you just simply have the images. This is what it is, and I don't have any intentions of doing anything to this particular deck. But what has been interesting about this, and I don't use this professionally, I have drawn from it when I simply want to tap into that kind of motherly, nurturing face of the goddess energy, when I really do just need a proverbial hug, I suppose. But I have actually found the readings to be quite poignant. And I have also, and I'm not going to do a comparison, this is again not the purpose of this particular video, I may go back and do another one, but Annika from Nobody's Here has done a review of this deck as well. Katie Flowers also did a really good review of this deck. She was as surprised as I would have been to be purchasing this. She's purchasing this deck. She is a pagan. I lose track of who identifies as a witch. I'm not sure if she identifies as a witch, but she's certainly a practicing pagan. I believe she does, but she's certainly a practicing pagan. And so I think she was quite, I remember, because I was shocked when I saw this come up in her feed, and I remember her saying, you know, she was so surprised that she has been so drawn to this, and has had quite wonderful experiences with reading with this. And I've heard that on more than one occasion. And then Annika from Nobody's Here did a review of this where she actually compares some of the cards to Mary L cards. And I think that they aren't as far off as yes, the language is different, and yes, there can most certainly run into cheese factor issues and that type of thing. But the core message can be found there. And I think that A, that's the important thing, and B, again, I'm just letting this be what it is. So I'm just going to go ahead and run through the cards with you, just so that you can see them if you've made it this far. But I'm really not here to overanalyze this deck. I'm just enjoying it for what it is and for the memories that it evokes for me. So here we have the Fool card, which is the new beginning. It's the beginning of a journey. Talks about not worrying. You've got a guardian angel, whether that be your spirit guide, whether that be somebody who has passed, whether that be an angel, however you see that. There are unseen forces around you, and I think that that's quite lovely. We have that boy who's off being kind of foolish, and here we have the angel, where we often see the white dog and the Rider-Waite Smith, who is kind of helping and guiding his steps. Here we have, I suppose I should zoom in a little further here. And just because they're beautiful, I'm just kind of, you know me, I'm all about the aesthetics as well. Here, let's see, we're even in screen, yeah. So here we have number 1, which is almost all of the titles have been changed. We have Manifest Your Dreams. This is about, there's nothing, you don't need to do anything. You've got everything you need. It's just time to start manifesting. And we have sort of these, almost look like genies coming out of the bottle and doing magic, I suppose. But that you have resources, you have the support that you need. It's time to start manifesting. Here we have for number 2, go within. For the High Priestess, you're very intuitive. You need to take the time to be quiet, reflect, and go deep. It's not really a time for action so much as it is time digging in. We have creativity and abundance for 3, which are keywords for the Empress. We have lots of cherubs in this deck, which is, difficult for me to handle because I do not like cherubs, but I can get on with it. This is a call to action. It's time to accomplish things. It's time to create, give birth to projects, it says. Follow your passion. So it's quite a lovely message there. Here we have the Emperor, which is organization. Your plans are on target. Everything's going to be smooth if you organize, discipline, this kind of thing. Allow your creativity. This is kind of abundant creativity, and this is let your creativity be guided by some logic. We need some logic there. Here we have embrace those around you for 5. This is a time of spiritual growth, Hierophant. Accept help from others. You could find comfort in traditional solutions, which I can certainly resonate with today. And I love this because we have sort of the mother with their children at church and their prayer books. So there is, again, that idea. There is something that is comforting and about ritual, whatever that might mean for you. There is something about that that's quite comforting. For the Lovers, we have open your heart. Again, talking about making choices, very traditional when you really, yes, the verbiage is flowery and sometimes slightly cheesy, but the verb, it's there. We have the idea of love, we have the idea of choice, and so I think that's quite, and I love the storybook looking thing here. Here we have 7. There's so much things you can do. Listening to divine guidance, showering you with gratitude. We have the little guy here with his bike. It doesn't talk so much about movement here in this, but we certainly see the movement in the image. Here we have chapter 8, we have number 8, fair decisions. So I would say that this one, let's take a look at 11. Yes, so in this deck, 8 is justice and 11 is strength. So this is about fair decisions. Stand your ground, review all the details, that kind of justice-y feel. We have the spiritual teacher for the Hermit. I like cards. I'm not going to lie that our Saint Nicholas in the Hermit cards I think is wonderful. It makes me smile. It works with the deck. And so it's about going off, spending some time alone, focus on things you're going to learn. We have number 10. We have a happy change. So this would be the Wheel of Fortune. So there is going to be change. Now there are many traditional Wheel of Fortunes that have the Wheel of Fortune as a positive change. I think that it can go either way. Clearly they're going with the one way, fortunate change. Here we have inner strength. I love the little girl with the cat. I mean, come on. Usually a young woman with a lion. That's adorable. But about having courage and kindness, that the compassion that you give to others, you have to give to yourself. This is very much what the strength card is about. 12, we have an upside dog standing on his head. It's time to view things from a different perspective. Don't worry to pause the momentum while you rethink your plan won't last. It's a pause also, but I quite think that again, it gets at the core. That core idea of the card is there. For number 13, which is of course death, we have letting go, releasing the past. You're going to have help from your angels, endings, starting new beginnings. It's there. We have number 14 as a win-win solution. There is strength in diversity. By blending the ideas of other people with your own, you can come up with a solution that's magnificent. So we have that idea of blending. 15, we have choose freedom. This is where you're feeling blocked, and that you can free yourself from the obstacles by choosing a different path, which is exactly what we talk about with the devil, that we're abdicating power with the devil, and that we have the choice to free ourselves. Turn away from negativity, this kind of thing, and start to envision other possibilities. Here we have 16, out with the old, in with the new. It's time to move in a new direction. As a wake-up call, right? To make the changes to put you in the right direction. Here we have for 17, a celebration. This is a wonderful time, joyful future, have faith. You know, it's kind of the hope. We have the star that's here. 18, we have intuition and insight. Your intuitive abilities are very accurate right now, so you can trust your guidance. So this is, you know, intuition and insight. We talk about that with the moon card a lot. Here we have number 19, which would be the sun. Again, we do have a child. I quite like him, to be honest, better than a naked baby on a horse, but plans have worked out. It's time to shine, success, all this kind of thing. You know, it's the sun card. Number 20 for judgment, we have review and contemplation. I like this. You've accomplished things. It's time to sort of review things and figure out what direction that you're going to start to go in after you have that moment of review. For me, it's, you know, looking at both ways that you've gotten yourself where you are, both in the bad decisions as well as good decisions that have brought you here. And then after you kind of review those, you can move forward. And then we have successful completion for the world card. You know, it's a successful completion. That's what the world card is. So as you can see, I hope you can see, they're really, I mean, yes, they are sweet. They are supposed to be sweet. These are what these are. You wouldn't be purchasing this deck accidentally thinking that you were getting something else. It's quite clear what it is. But the core, there you can see the cards that are in there. And again, I'm not making a case. This is not a deck that I probably will ever use in terms, unless somebody requested a spiritual, I guess, reading. This isn't something I plan on using with clients. But I do really appreciate, just because I think many of my clients wouldn't particularly want a Christian-themed deck, which this certainly is. However, it's quite lovely, and the meanings are still there, and for what it is for me, it works beautifully as that. Now, of course, the suits have changed as well, and I'm not going to zoom out to show. I know I always do that, but I'm not going to, because I talked quite a lot at the very beginning, and I do want to, you know, make this get finished in a timely fashion, aka at least an hour. So here we have the Ace of Action, which would be for the wands. We do have cherubs, you know. You know how I feel about cherubs. I just have to move forward, right? He's heralding the aces, or heralding the wands. So we have the Two of Action, making choices, opportunity around you to move forward. We have the Three of Action. Things are working out beautifully. Now your ship has come in. It's time to decide what your next project's going to be. The Four of Action says hard work and efforts lead you to a sense of safety and contentment. Five of Action, we have some discord. We've got a snowball fight going on here, people. Your angels want you to know that you need to be assertive and self-confident, defend your position, right? But you also have the right to excuse yourself from people who are bringing drama. That's a good message. Six of Action, here we have a success. Your project is successful. You're getting awards and promotions. Good job. Here we have the sweet, look at her, Seven of Action. Claim your personal power. Feel confident, as your angels will give you strength to say no when it's the right thing to do for yourself. Talking about your struggle that you may be having could be an inner struggle that's reflecting in an outer struggle. Here we have the Eight of Action, that there's so much going on that you may be overwhelmed. And so we have that sort of sense of lots of things that are going on in the card. The 9 of action is you've worked really hard, that you're almost there, that you have protections, like hold the line. The 10 of action, she just has so much to do. She's working too hard. She's got the weight of the world on her little tiny shoulders, an entire house to clean, and she needs to find healthy balance. So cute. I'm sorry. I just think they're adorable. I just don't even care. Messenger of action, something new and exciting. So the court cards have been changed to messengers, helpers. Look at, I love that. What's the name of that children's book with the toy? Is it called The Toy Soldier? I love it. So this is the helper, and then we have the healer. Do whatever you set your mind to if your heart is open. You're asked to be doing a lot of things, that you're making a difference. You can handle difficult situations with grace, it says. And then we have the guardians. So it's time to step up and be a leader. And he looks like a leader. Here we have another cherub. I know we can't hardly deal with the cherubs here. And it's hard to not, discuss, because obviously these things are being discussed in a deck of entirely, from what I've seen so far, entirely European white. Well, I think that was, I just may have seen it Asian, I'm not sure. We do have the one lone black cherub here. I'm not sure that that's really beneficial if you're not going to go a little bit further to balance the racial identity. I'm not sure about that, but there you have it. We have a cute cherub, not cute cherub. Actually, these cherubs could be worse. The ones that look like they're just overflowing in rolls and they look very strange are worse, but I'm just not a fan of cherubs. I'm sorry. So we have thought for air, obviously, or swords. Here we have the 2 of thoughts. You're not moving forward, it says. You've got to make some decisions so that you can move forward. Here we have the 3 of thought. This is about healing. The sadness that you feel is going to fade. You'll be able to see more clearly, forgive yourselves, embrace your future. So it touches on the aspects of the 3 of swords without obviously being too 3 of swordsies. You know I love 3 of swords. 4 of thought. Listen for guidance. I quite like that. Taking a break. Go on vacation. Meditation could be helpful. So I just feel like you can see the essence of the cards here. Would I recommend this as a deck to read tarot or to learn tarot? No, I really wouldn't. Do I use this again for readings for others? No. I'm not saying I never would, but no. But I just think, again, for me, it doesn't matter. I'm just enjoying this lovely little deck for its sweetness, and I love the old vintage imagery. I just love all of it. The path you were on seemed like the right one, but now you've run into a challenge. So this is a challenge card because it's 5s. 6 of thought. The storms have passed. You've moved away. You're moving towards a better position. We can see a boat here in the show. Here we have the 7 of thought, that there's been confusion, that you're going to be getting the truth over, and that's going to help you as you move forward. The 8 of thought is about feeling restricted. She feels pretty restricted in all that finery. And she needs to refuse to be stuck in a situation that's making her unhappy. Don't wait for someone to rescue you when you can free yourself. Very 8 of swords. 9 of thought. Stop being so hard on yourself. Don't worry so much. Worry's not helpful. That kind of thing. The 10 of thought is a situation that's been troubling you has come to an end, which is kind of how I see it. Now, this is obviously much nicer, but for me, the idea of the 10 of swords is about the ending of something that needs to end. It may be difficult, it may be a relief, or it may be sad and very difficult to get through, but for some way, this is we're talking about thoughts here. The 10 of swords traditionally is not about the end of somebody's life because they've been a pain in your butt and it's time for them to die. It is about thoughts. It's about air. It's about that sort of mental action that we need to release. Messenger of thought. So we have our messenger now, and new things coming. We have the helper of thoughts for the knight. We have the healer of thought for the queen. And we have the guardian of thought. That's a pretty funny picture. Doesn't so much go with the king of swords. You know, what are you going to do? Here we have another cherub. So this would be of emotion, which would be of water. We have our new emotional experience. The two of our emotion, very romantic, you know, fairy tale. We have some more cherubs here. 3 of emotions, great news, engagements, pregnancies, births, graduations, friends, you know, exciting things happening here. 4 of emotions, this would be the 4 of cups traditionally, that there are people that can help you, opportunities being offered, but you aren't noticing them. So it's very traditional with the, you know, where there be the cup and she's just, you know, you're ignoring it or you just don't see it. The 5 of emotion is about forgiveness, forgiving yourself, forgiving those around you, that grieving is part of a normal part of life, but that, you know, you need to be able to move forward. The 6 of emotion, seeing the eyes through the, you know, life through the eyes of a child, which is entirely what this deck for me is about. I mean, the 6 of emotion, I think here pretty much sums it up. It's important to remember your past accurately. Memories can fill your heart with many emotions, and for this, it's very nostalgic. 7 emotions, making important decision that you've been putting off. Stop procrastinating. The 8 of emotions is about longing here. Maybe time to move to a different place. The 9 of emotions, wishes are granted, dreams come true. This is a good card. And then, of course, the 10 of emotion with the happy people all together, loving family, harmony. And then we again have our court. So we have the messenger, not a cherub this time. So all of them are cherubs, but this one, you'd think they just follow suit and have cherub there, but, well, not all. We haven't come to the other one yet, have we? No, those are the aces. See, I'm bad. Helper of emotion, the healer of emotion, so sweet, and the guardian of emotion. We come to abundance, which would be the pentacles, and here we have our cherub. So we, never you fear, we had our 4th cherub. Look, I love her. 2 of abundance, feeling out of balance. How sweet is that picture? Now, come on. Come on, cynical people of the world. How gorgeous is that? I love that. Here we have the 3 of abundance. The 4. Reflect upon your relationship with money. Are you spending it too freely or holding it too tightly? It's kind of asking yourself to touch bases. Doesn't necessarily mean that you are being miserly. Maybe it's the right time to be holding on. So you need to kind of just take stock. I like that. 5 of abundance. How cute is that? Sometimes everybody needs a hand. Accept the help of those around you. 6 of abundance. Yeah, so it's okay to take the abundance that's being offered. You're going to be able to in turn turn around and give abundance to others. 7 of abundance. It's about having patience. You put the hard work in. The fruit's going to be, I love this little, look at the little gardening. Little gardening children. 8 of abundance, so this would be the 8 of pentacles, learning, honing your skills. It's time to buckle down and do your schoolwork. The 9 of abundance, life is wonderful. Everything's paid off. It's good. Buy yourself a gift. I did. Thank you. 10 of abundance, heaven has provided you with many blessings. People are bonded, children are provided for, all is well, as we see with the 10 of cups. And then we have a lovely 10 of abundance, who looks a little bit Asian-y with what's going on here. Very romanticized Asian, but again, it's kind of strange to just randomly put one in when there's nothing else here, but that's a discussion for another time. because we're just enjoying it. The lovely Leprechaun for the Helper of Abundance with his pot of gold, the Healer of Abundance, and the Guardian of Abundance. So there we have it. Let me zoom back out again here. And I know I'm not putting this through my usual ringer. I'm not arguing with it. I'm just, you know, I really am just allowing it to be what it is. I'm not this, and I was upfront about that from the beginning. This isn't an in-depth let's tear apart this particular deck or really dig into it. It's just, for me, it's simply not that. And so I was clear about that. This was a walk through a little bit of a lovely path. And you all know that I find tarot to be quite lovely all by itself without shifts and changes. However, I also believe that sometimes the Rider-Waite-Smith actually takes cards that numerologically aren't shadow cards and makes them more shadow than they need to be. So, you know, everything that we look at, depending on the deck that we're looking at, even if we want to take it back to the Rider-Waite-Smith, remember that's still a layer on top of traditional tarot. And that's also putting its sort of interpretation on something that was already there. So this has been this reinterpreting of tarot is something that's been going on for a very, very long time, and I'm pretty sure it will continue to do so. Some of them will resonate, some of them won't. Thankfully, we have many decks to choose from in this life that we are living in, and there's no lack of finding a deck that will work for you. And this is simply serving a purpose of saying, happy birthday, Grandma. Thank you for the beautiful, beautiful memories that I have with going to church and sitting and talking to Mary and lighting the prayer candles and kneeling and standing and kneeling and standing, even though I never knew what I was kneeling and standing for. And this just has... thank you for the little nuns who were so sweet and bought all my Buckeye necklaces. You know, this is just, that's what this is to me. And yet, as I think that you've seen, the messages are still there. The information that you need is still there. Now this I feel like isn't horribly, wonderfully shuffled. You can see it still needs some splitting up for the gilding to wear down a bit so that it doesn't stick. It definitely has a gloss to it. Not my favorite ever cardstock. It's just typical. If you've had any Doreen Virtue deck, it's typical. So I'm just going to pull like this. That's a rough. See, that's what I'm telling you. Even though it can still be rough, that's a rough one for me to get today. It's going to be sweet about it, but it's still rough. And here we've got the Five of Cups. And organization, which is the Emperor. So, yeah, thank you, loving, sweet deck. So yes, we have the release of the past, that endings are difficult, but that we can still have joy, change the direction of your life by changing your thoughts. Obviously, you can't, in the true sense of the word, you really can't, I can't change a situation by my thoughts, but I can obviously change, I can understand that this is all part of the process, and especially with my grandmother. She's 100 years old. She has seen so much and lived so much love that there's going to come a time, whether it's this, this particular now time or in the future, we're not far away from needing to let go. And so that's a process that is going to be hand in hand with the Five of Emotion, that idea of grieving, and that is normal and okay to grieve. Because I found even today a little bit of guilt, maybe not so much guilt, but kind of almost confusion to my own self as to when I think about, she's 100 years old. She's lived a wonderful long life that truly was full of light and love. She also lost the love of her life very early, and my most loving grandfather who I adored, and lost him quite early on. And she's known her share of loss as well, but she has had a wonderful long life. And so I was like, wow, it's okay to be upset, but what is really upsetting me so much, because it was an upsetting day, and it's like, it's okay to be upset, even if, because a lot of people, oh, she's 100 years old. It's like, yeah, I know, but it's still sad. Like, it's still my grandmother, who I just feel like she should live forever, and I don't want her to obviously have any struggles, and so it's difficult. And so this, the 5 emotions here today says it's okay to grieve. We don't have to, always have a stiff upper lip, even if we can say, oh, but she lived a wonderful life, and she's had wonderful experiences, and you have wonderful memories with her. It's still sad. And grieving is okay. But that's interesting that seeking out a mentor. I see this more see this word, and this is what I found out, something I found with working with the Angel Tarot with that challenge, where I did quite a few readings in a row, I think close to 20, is I found that with these decks, with these wordings, which I don't like having all this wording here, but what I have found is that very often the words themselves become part of the oracle. And so while maybe the entire sentence or the entire meaning of the card isn't relevant, a certain word will pop up out of the image and become its own oracle. And so I think this idea of seeking a mentor is a good thing, and I certainly did that today. I was able to talk to a couple people who were able to say exactly what I would say to somebody else, that it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to acknowledge the wondrous life that she had and still be sad. And that kind of thing, and so that there needs to be some logic, but the grieving is okay. So here we kind of see that balance. I don't have to be entirely logical. I don't have to also entirely wallow as well. It's that kind of finding balance there to get through difficult times. So yeah, as you can see, the Guardian Angel Tarot did not pull any punches for me. This happens to me all the time when I'm trying to do these things, and these is like really poignant cards come up, and I'm like, really? This is where you had to go for the ending reading. So there you have it. The Guardian Angel Tarot not pulling punches for me. So I hope that you found this interesting. I know it's not kind of my normal review type. I didn't hold this to the standard in which I often hold decks to, but that's okay. I hope you enjoyed it anyways, and I wish you a very, very wonderful night.